The burgundy box felt cold against Jasmine Washington's thigh as she sat in seat 1A, 30,000 feet above Georgia. The burgundy box felt cold against Jasmine Washington's thigh as she sat in seat 1, 30,000 feet above Georgia, watching her 7-year-old son Marcus trace his finger along the airplane window. "Mommy, is Grandma Rosa flying with us?" he whispered, his small voice barely audible over the engine hum. Jasmine's throat tightened as she touched the mahogany container on her lap, 8 inches of polished wood, holding all that remained of the woman who'd raised her in a cramped Detroit, the apartment who'd worked 28 years preparing first-class meals she'd never tasted, who'd died 3 weeks ago with industrial cleaners still under her fingernails, whose cremation Jasmine had delayed for 10 days, while family gathered from 3 states and dreams of her daughter's success still warm in her heart. Yes, baby Jasmine managed her free hand, finding Marcus's. "We're bringing her home." She didn't tell him that home was a cemetery plot in Detroit next to grandparents he'd never met, that this journey was supposed to be about grief and closure and honoring the woman who'd scrubbed airplane galleys so her daughter could one day run an airline empire. She didn't tell him that in 45 minutes everything would shatter. The lead flight attendant appeared then, all sharp angles and blonde severity, her name tag reading V. Sterling in crisp letters. Vanessa Sterling, 16 years with SkyBridge Airways. Stopped at row 1 with a clipboard and an expression Jasmine had seen too many times in boardrooms and country clubs, the look that said, "Times you don't belong here," asterisk. "Ma'am, I need to verify your boarding pass again," Vanessa said, her voice flat as steel. Jasmine looked up from Rose's ashes, felt Marcus's hand squeeze tighter in hers, and something ancient stirred in her chest, her mother's voice from 1,000 childhood lessons. "Times. Baby girl, when they try to make you small, you stand tall. Document everything. Stay calm. Wait for your moment. Asterisk. I already showed it 3 times, Jasmine replied, her voice carrying the controlled calm of a woman who'd navigated hostile boardrooms since age 25. I need to see it again. There are reports of seating irregularities. Marcus looked up at his mother with confusion clouding his dark eyes, and Jasmine felt something crack inside her professional armor. This wasn't a board meeting. This was her son, her grief, her mother's final journey home. But she reached for her phone with steady fingers, opened the SkyBridge app, the airline owned by Phoenix Global Airlines Group, the company where her signature appeared on 42,000 paychecks, including the one this woman cashed every 2 weeks. Here Jasmine said, showing the digital boarding pass, Seat 1A confirmation number. Her name in bold, Jasmine Washington, CEO of Phoenix Global Airlines Group. But Vanessa didn't know that. Nobody on this flight knew that. Jasmine had booked under her real name, no special codes, no VIP flags. Just a grieving daughter bringing her mother's ashes home. She watched Vanessa study the screen for 20 seconds too long, watched suspicion harden into something uglier. And the child, Vanessa, asked, gesturing at Marcus like he was cargo. "My son, Marcus. Seat 1B. He's 7 years old." Jasmine added this detail preemptively, knowing airline policies. "Children in first class usually require additional documentation," Vanessa said, her tone suggesting this was a burden rather than a standard request. The words hung in the recycled air like poison. Jasmine felt Marcus shrink against her side, felt the weight of Rosa's ashes pressing against her leg, felt the rage that wanted to explode from her throat. Instead, she pulled out the small black notebook she carried everywhere, clicked her pen with deliberate precision, and wrote times 10:47 a.m. 4th boarding pass verification. Only our seats. Demanded documentation for 7-year-old child. Asterisk. She looked up at Vanessa, with eyes that had stared down, Fortune 500 executives, and smiled, with perfect, terrible, calm. "Is there anything else?" Vanessa stepped back, rattled by something she couldn't name. "No." For now. As the flight attendant retreated to the galley, Marcus tugged Jasmine's sleeve. "Mommy, did I do something wrong?" Those 6 words, innocent, confused, afraid, would echo through congressional hearings, federal courtrooms, and the conscience of an industry. But in that moment, Jasmine could only pull her son close, press her lips to his forehead, and whisper the lie that mothers tell when the world is cruel. "No, baby, you did nothing wrong." The morning sun cut through Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport in golden streams, illuminating dust motes that danced above Gate B-14 like tiny prayers. Jasmine sat in the boarding lounge with Marcus curled against her side, his feet dangling inches from the industrial carpet, his fingers wrapped around a well-worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are. The mahogany box rested on the seat beside her, and every few minutes she found herself touching it, reassurance that Rosa was still there, still with her, even as ash and absence. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard Hayes, chairman of Phoenix Global's board. Times Jazz last chance to postpone Seattle. Board understands family comes first. Asterisk. She typed back quickly. Times. Already postponed 2 weeks. Mother's burial. Can't wait. Seattle will be there next month. Asterisk. The grand opening of Phoenix Global's new training facility, $950 million. Her signature achievement, the industry's future, had been scheduled for today. She'd moved heaven and earth to reschedule it, had weathered board complaints and investor concerns, because some things mattered more than ribbon cuttings and stock prices. Some things were sacred. "Mommy, is Aunt Denise sad?" Marcus asked, without looking up from his book, his 7-year-old wisdom already understanding that grief was a thing shared. "Very sad, baby. Grandma Rosa was her big sister. Like how I wish I had a big sister." Jasmine smiled despite the ache. Exactly like that. Marcus had been asking for siblings since he was 4, not understanding that his father had left when he was 2. That single motherhood and CEO ambitions didn't leave room for expanding families, that sometimes you got one perfect child and that was enough. She pulled him closer, breathing in his shampoo smell, coconut and innocence, and remembered Rosa's hands braiding her hair 30 years ago in that Detroit apartment, Rosa's voice saying, "Times, baby girl. You're going to change the world, but don't forget to love it too." Asterisk. A gate agent's voice crackled over the intercom. "SkyBridge Airways Flight 447 to Detroit is now boarding first class, and passengers requiring special assistance." Jasmine stood, helped Marcus gather his backpack, lifted the mahogany box with both hands. Around them, the terminal hummed with humanity, businessmen scrolling phones, families juggling strollers, elderly couples moving slowly with canes and patience. She'd flown this route 100 times, had sat in first class as a reward for miles accumulated during her climb, from analyst to VP to COO to CEO, had never once thought about what it meant to belong times there. She belonged because she'd earned it, because Rosa had scrubbed airplanes for 28 years to pay for Georgia Tech, because she'd graduated top of her class, earned her Wharton MBA on scholarship, because she'd been brilliant and ruthless and lucky enough to survive in rooms that didn't want her. As they approached the gate agent, an older black man with silver hair and kind eyes looked up from scanning boarding passes. His gaze fell on the mahogany box, and something shifted in his expression, recognition of ritual of grief of the journey she was making. "Ma'am," he said softly, "my condolences. Bringing someone home." The unexpected kindness hit her like a wave. "Yes, my mother. Safe travels, ma'am. They're watching over you now." Marcus looked up at the man with solemn eyes. "Thank you, sir." It would be the last kindness they received for the next 2 hours. They walked down the jet bridge, Jasmine in her burgundy suit and cream blouse, professional, even in grief, Marcus in his favorite dinosaur shirt. She carried the mahogany box carefully, its sealed certificate of cremation, visible through the clear plastic sleeve attached to the lid, TSA-approved documentation she'd obtained from the funeral home. along with the death certificate and airline authorization form, the box between them like a third passenger. The SkyBridge aircraft gleamed in the morning light, its logo promising comfort and care, its employees trained to serve with dignity and grace. Jasmine had reviewed those training manuals, herself had approved the budget for customer service initiatives, had signed off on Phoenix Global's stated values, times every passenger, every flight, every time, asterisk. She didn't know yet that those values were words on paper, that systemic rot had hollowed out the promise that in minutes she'd become both victim and witness to the failure she'd unknowingly enabled. The cabin smelled like leather and coffee, and the particular air-conditioned cold that only airplanes managed a temperature designed for comfort but always slightly off. Jasmine stepped through the door with Marcus's hand in hers, the mahogany box tucked against her side, and felt the familiar narrowing of a first-class space 10 seats in 2 rows, a galley hidden behind a curtain overhead bins that closed with expensive softness. Seat 1A, beckoned by the window, 1B, beside it on the aisle. "This is our spot, baby," she said, helping Marcus climb in first. He settled into 1B with wide eyes, running his small hands over the leather armrests like they were treasures. "Mommy, this is fancy. Grandma would have loved to see you here," Jasmine replied, her voice catching on the past tense that still felt wrong. She placed the mahogany box on her lap as she sank into 1A, and for a moment everything was fine. They were just passengers, just people, just a mother and son on a sacred journey. Then she saw her. Vanessa Sterling emerged from the galley like a storm system, all rigid posture and tight blonde bun, her uniform pressed into creases sharp enough to cut. Behind her came a junior flight attendant, young Latina, her name tag reading S. Martinez, carrying warm towels on a silver tray. Sophia Martinez moved down the aisle with genuine warmth, offering towels to the tech investor in 1C, the elderly couple in row 3, each interaction brief but kind. When she reached Marcus, she smiled like she meant it. "Good morning, I'm Sophia. Would you like a warm towel?" Marcus looked to Jasmine for permission. "Thank you, Sophia," Jasmine said, appreciating the small kindness. "We'd love that." Sophia handed towels to both of them with careful hands, and Jasmine noticed her eyes flicker to the mahogany box. Noticed the slight softening of her expression, recognition without intrusion. "If you need anything at all, please let me know," Sophia said quietly. It was the last genuine service they'd receive. Vanessa watched this exchange from the galley with narrowed eyes, and Jasmine felt the assessment happening, the cataloging of her burgundy suit's quality, expensive but not designer, her lack of wedding ring, single mother, her son's presence. Children didn't belong in first class unless they were white and quiet. Her very existence in this space, wrong. The older woman in 2A was already settled, her silver hair, perfect, her iPad open to documents. The man in 2B wore tech startup casual and worked his laptop with aggressive typing. They belonged. They fit. They were never questioned. The cabin door sealed with a hydraulic hiss, and the captain's voice rolled through the speakers with practiced ease. "Good morning, folks. This is Captain James Morrison. Welcome aboard SkyBridge 447 service to Detroit. We're looking at a smooth flight, about 2 hours and 15 minutes in the air." Marcus pressed his face to the window as the plane pushed back from the gate, and Jasmine wrapped her arm around him, the box secure between them. The engines spooled up with gathering power, and she felt the familiar acceleration, the momentary weightlessness as wheels left pavement, the climb into blue Atlanta sky. "We're flying, Mommy." Marcus breathed wonder, erasing everything else. "We are, baby. We're bringing Grandma Rosa home." But even as she said it, Vanessa Sterling was moving through the cabin with a tablet checking manifest information with Derek Morgan, the purser, a middle-aged white man with tired eyes and a complicit silence. "Row 1, Vanessa muttered, showing Derek the screen. "Washington. Mother and son. No father listed. 2 first-class seats. Checked baggage only. Derek glanced toward them. So, they don't fit the demographic. Look at her suit off-rack. No jewelry, except a cheap watch. The kid's wearing a dinosaur shirt. Vanessa, maybe they just... I'm going to verify thoroughly. Vanessa cut him off, her voice, sharp with certainty. Protocol. Sophia Martinez. Arranging items in the galley, overheard this exchange and felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd been with SkyBridge for 8 months fresh from training, still believing in the promises they'd made about dignity and service. She'd heard rumors about Vanessa whispers in crew lounges about passengers who'd complained about treatment that varied with skin color, about a lead flight attendant who decided who deserved first-class service. But Sophia had stayed quiet, had told herself it wasn't her business, had prioritized keeping her job over keeping her conscience. She looked at the mother in 1A, holding that wooden box like it contained the world, and made a decision that would change everything. She pulled her phone from her pocket, set it to record, and slipped it into her uniform pocket with the lens facing out. The seatbelt sign chimed off at 10,000 feet, and Vanessa Sterling rolled the beverage cart into the aisle with Derek Morgan trailing behind her like an uncomfortable shadow. The cart gleamed with promised champagne flutes, catching overhead light, crystal glasses arranged in perfect rows, silver bowls of warmed nuts, orange juice in glass carafes, apple juice in sealed bottles. Marcus was coloring in the book Sophia had given him, his small tongue poking out in concentration as he stayed carefully inside the lines of a triceratops. Jasmine had her notebook open, writing notes for the press conference she'd have to give in Detroit, words about loss and legacy and her mother's hands. But she was aware of everything the cart approaching. Vanessa's posture radiating cold efficiency, the way other passengers were receiving service with smiles and small talk. Row 2 came first. "Good morning, Senator Brooks," Vanessa said, her voice suddenly warm as summer honey. "Champagne or orange juice?" The woman in 2A looked up with surprise at being recognized, her silver hair catching light. "Coffee, please, black." Jasmine's attention sharpened. "Senator." She glanced over and saw the woman more clearly now. Patricia Brooks, California chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. Jasmine had watched Brooks's committee hearings on C-SPAN multiple times, had studied her positions on airline regulations, though they'd never met in person. Brooks's eyes met hers for a brief second, something unreadable passing between them before the senator returned to her iPad. "And for you?" Sir, Vanessa asked the man in 2B with professional courtesy. "Tomato juice, thanks," he replied without looking up from his laptop. The cart was now directly beside Marcus's seat, close enough that he could see the bottles of apple juice lined up like soldiers. He looked up at Vanessa with the open expectation of a child who'd never learned that service could be weaponized. Vanessa looked right through him and began pushing the cart forward. "Excuse me," Jasmine said, her voice level but firm. Vanessa stopped without turning. "Yes, could my son have some apple juice, please?" The request hung in the air like smoke. Vanessa slowly turned her expression perfectly blank. "We're out of apple juice." Marcus's eyes went to the cart, to the 4 visible bottles, confusion creasing his forehead. Jasmine felt something volcanic stir beneath her professional calm. But Rose's voice echoed in her memory. "Times, document, everything. Stay calm, wait for your moment, times." So she kept her face neutral, even as her pulse hammered. "I can see 4 bottles on your cart," Jasmine said quietly. "Those are reserved for other passengers." "Which passengers?" "Later service." The lie sat between them like a third person. Marcus looked up at his mother with a question forming on his lips, but before he could speak, the man in 2B, Michael Chen, Jasmine would learn later, set down his laptop and leaned forward. "Excuse me, I just received orange juice, and there's clearly plenty. The child can have some juice." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "Sir, I appreciate your input, but I'm managing beverage service according to protocol." What protocol? Michael pressed his voice, carrying the irritation of someone watching injustice unfold. The protocol that denies a 7-year-old apple juice while bottles sit right there. Sir, please don't interfere with flight operations. Jasmine placed her hand on Marcus's shoulder, felt him trembling slightly, and made a decision. Orange juice, then. If you're out of apple, we're running low on orange juice as well. I need to conserve supplies. The air in the cabin changed. Other passengers were watching now, sensing the wrongness, the obvious cruelty. Senator Brooks had stopped reading her documents. The elderly couple in row 3 had gone quiet. Even the tech investor in 1C was paying attention. Jasmine reached into her bag and pulled out a small bottle of water she'd brought from the terminal. "It's okay, baby," she said to Marcus, her voice gentle, even as rage burned in her chest. "Mommy has water. We can share." Marcus took the bottle with small, uncertain hands. "Okay, Mommy," he whispered, but his eyes held a question that would haunt her times. "Why won't she give me juice times?" Jasmine opened her notebook and wrote with precise, angry strokes. Times 1015 a.m. Beverage service. Refused apple juice for Marcus, despite 4 visible bottles. Claimed reserved for other passengers. Refused orange juice, claiming running low false per passenger in 2B. Marcus denied all beverage service. Asterisk. She looked up at Vanessa, who was already moving the cart to row 3, all warmth and smiles for the white elderly couple. Champagne orange juice. We also have tomato juice and apple juice. She offered them, her voice dripping with the kindness she'd withheld from a 7-year-old child. Sophia Martinez, watching from the galley with her phone recording everything, felt tears sting her eyes and pressed the device deeper into her pocket to capture every word. 30 minutes later, the lunch cart emerged from the galley, with Derek pushing and Vanessa directing the aroma of heated meals, filling the cabin with promises of first-class care. Jasmine had been writing in her notebook, documenting every interaction, every slight building, a case with the methodical precision that had made her a formidable CEO. Marcus had fallen quiet beside her, his dinosaur coloring abandoned his small body, pressed against the window, as if making himself smaller might make him invisible. "Baby, you okay?" Jasmine asked, setting down her pen. "I'm hungry, Mommy," he whispered so quietly she almost missed it. Her heart cracked a little more. "Lunch is coming, sweetheart. Just a few more minutes." But when those minutes came, they brought fresh cruelty. Vanessa moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency, describing meals to each passenger with the care of a sommelier presenting wine. "Senator Brooks, today we have pan-seared salmon with lemon beurre blanc or herb-crusted chicken breast with roasted vegetables. Which would you prefer, salmon, please?" Brooks replied. But her eyes tracked to row 1 with growing concern. "Excellent choice. And for you, Mr. Chen Chicken." "Thanks." The cart arrived at row 1, and Jasmine felt Marcus sit up straighter, hope flickering across his face like candlelight. Then Vanessa turned the cart and headed back toward the galley. Just walked away. Marcus's face fell. Jasmine's hand tightened on her pen until her knuckles went white. 5 minutes passed. Other passengers were eating silverware, clinking against china, the normal sounds of first-class service. Marcus's stomach growled audibly, and he pressed his hand against it, embarrassed. Jasmine reached up and pressed the call button. The chime sounded, and Sophia Martinez appeared almost immediately, her face flushed. "Yes." "Ma'am, we haven't received our meals yet," Jasmine said, her voice still calm but with steel threading through it. Sophia's eyes widened slightly. "Let me check on that for you right away." She disappeared into the galley, and Jasmine heard muffled voices, Sophia's higher questioning Vanessa's low and dismissive. When Sophia returned, her professional mask was cracking at the edges. "Ma'am, I apologize. There was a miscommunication. Our lead attendant says you declined meals." The lie was so brazen, so bold, that for a moment Jasmine couldn't speak. Marcus looked up at her with confusion, and she saw him trying to remember. trying to figure out if maybe he had said something wrong, if maybe he'd somehow declined food without realizing it. That look, that 7-year-old self-doubt ignited something in Jasmine that all the personal slights hadn't touched. "We absolutely did not decline," Jasmine said, each word crisp and clear. "We've been waiting." Sophia's hands twisted together. "I'll get your meals immediately. We have chicken. What about salmon? I believe we're out. We're the first row and we haven't been served yet." "How are you out of salmon?" Sophia's eyes darted toward the galley. Let me check." She returned 2 minutes later with 2 chicken meals. Her face tight with an apology she couldn't speak aloud, she set them down with trembling hands. "I'm very sorry for the delay." "Thank you," Jasmine said, recognizing an ally trapped in a hostile system. Marcus looked at the chicken heavily seasoned, clearly designed for adult palates, and his face fell. "Mommy, this is spicy." Jasmine tested a bite and confirmed it was aggressively peppery. "Sophia, do you have a children's meal we do?" Sophia said quickly. "Let me get one, no." Vanessa's voice cut across the cabin. She'd emerged from the galley, her face hard. "We don't serve children's meals in first class." "Yes, we do, Sophia," said her voice, small but insistent. "I loaded them myself this morning. Those are for emergency use only. This child needs to eat. Then he can eat the chicken, like everyone else." The cabin had gone completely silent now. Every passenger was watching the air thick with second-hand horror. Michael Chen set down his fork with a sharp clink. "This is absurd. The kid clearly can't eat spicy food. You have children's meals. Give him one." "Sir, I've asked you once not to interfere. I'm not interfering. I'm witnessing discrimination." The word hung in the recycled air like a bomb. Vanessa's face went red. "I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice, sir, or you'll be reported for disruptive behavior." Senator Brooks stood up, her 60 years of political authority radiating like heat. "Ma'am, I'm Senator Patricia Brooks, chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. I've been watching your conduct this entire flight, and it constitutes clear violations of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title II. I strongly suggest you provide appropriate service to all passengers immediately." Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it, looked between the senator and Jasmine and Marcus like a cornered animal. Finally, she turned and stalked to the galley. Sophia followed and returned moments later with a children's meal, mac and cheese fruit cup crackers. She set it in front of Marcus with shaking hands. "I'm so sorry," she whispered so quietly only Jasmine could hear. "This isn't right." Marcus looked at the mac and cheese like it was salvation, but he didn't touch it. He looked up at his mother instead. "Mommy, is it okay if I eat this? I don't want to get in trouble." Those words, times "I don't want to get in trouble," times shattered something fundamental in Jasmine Washington. Jasmine Washington had faced down hostile takeovers, navigated boardrooms where she was the only woman and the only person of color, had stood before shareholders who questioned her competence based on everything except her actual performance. She had built armor over 34 years, had learned to swallow rage and metabolize it into strategy, had mastered the art of staying calm when every cell in her body screamed for justice. But watching her 7-year-old son ask permission to eat mac and cheese, watching him internalize the message that his hunger was conditional, that his very existence in this space required constant apology, that broke something that couldn't be repaired with professionalism or patience. "Baby," she said, her voice thick with tears. She wouldn't shed. "Not yet. Not here. You never have to ask permission to eat. You never have to apologize for being hungry. You eat that food and you know that you deserve it." "Okay." Marcus nodded, but she could see the damage already done, the seed of doubt planted. The question forming in his young mind times, "What did I do wrong?" times. She opened her notebook with trembling hands and wrote, "Times 11:03 a.m. Meal service denied entirely. False claim we declined." When confronted, denied children's meal. Claiming emergency use only contradicted by Junior FA. After Senator Brooks' intervention finally provided kids' meal, Marcus asked permission to eat his own food. Psychological harm inflicted on minor child. This ends today. Asterisk. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, probably another text from the office. Another crisis requiring CEO attention, another decision that affected 42,000 employees. She ignored it. Right now, she wasn't a CEO. She was a mother holding ashes and watching her son learn that the world could be cruel for no reason except the color of his skin. Michael Chen pulled something from his bag, a sealed snack box from the airport, and leaned across the aisle. "Hey Marcus, I bought too many snacks at the airport. Would you help me out and take this one? I can't eat it all." Marcus looked at the box with longing. Pretzels, cookies, cheese crackers visible through the plastic, but fear held him frozen. Jasmine was about to decline politely when Vanessa appeared like a vengeful spirit. "Sir, sharing food is prohibited under cross-contamination safety protocols." Michael stared at her. "It's a sealed package. Nevertheless, I need to confiscate it. You're going to take food from a child. I'm enforcing safety regulations." "What safety regulation?" Senator Brooks interjected from 2A, her voice sharp as broken glass. "FAA code reference, please." Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. There was no regulation. There was only cruelty, dressed in procedure. But she reached for the snack box anyway, and Marcus, sweet, gentle Marcus, who'd never hurt anyone, who cried when he saw injured birds, pulled it against his chest like a treasure he'd finally been given permission to want. "Don't touch my son," Jasmine said, her voice so low and cold that ice might have formed in the air between them. Every passenger in first class turned. Even the couple in row 3 stopped eating. The tech investor in 1C set down his champagne flute with exaggerated care. Vanessa's hand hovered in midair, and something in Jasmine's eyes, something that had nothing to do with corporate authority and everything to do with a mother's fundamental rage, made her step back. "Ma'am, I'm simply trying to—" "What is your name?" Jasmine interrupted. "I've already told you. Your full name, your employee identification number." "Vanessa Sterling. Employee number S47362. Jasmine wrote it down with slow, deliberate strokes. "Thank you, Miss Sterling. That will be all. I'm the lead flight attendant on this aircraft, and I'm the mother of a 7-year-old boy who just asked permission to eat food because you've spent 2 hours teaching him he doesn't deserve basic dignity. We're done here." Vanessa's face cycled through emotions, confusion, anger, indignation, before settling on cold authority. "Ma'am, if you continue to be disruptive, I'll have to involve the captain. Please do. I'm trying to perform my duties. Your duties include denying children beverages and food, teaching 7-year-olds they need permission to exist. Those are your duties." The cabin was absolutely silent now, even the engine noise seeming to fade. Senator Brooks had her iPad out, fingers flying across the screen. Michael Chen was staring with naked shock. Sophia Martinez stood frozen in the galley entrance, her phone still recording in her pocket, tears streaming down her face. Vanessa drew herself up, playing her final card. "I'm going to ask you one more time to comply with crew instructions, and I'm going to ask you one time to step away from my son before I make the worst day of your life seem like a warm-up." The threat carried weight beyond words, something in Jasmine's tone, promising consequences that transcended the airplane, transcended the moment. Vanessa felt it like a cold wind and finally retreated to the galley. Marcus unwrapped the snack box with shaking hands and bit into a pretzel like it was the best thing he'd ever tasted. Jasmine put her arm around him, felt his small body trembling, and whispered, "You did nothing wrong, baby. Nothing. Remember that." But in her notebook, she was already writing the opening lines of the press conference that would detonate across national news in 18 hours' times. "My 7-year-old son asked if he did something wrong. Here's what actually happened." Asterisk. Captain Morrison's voice crackled through the cabin speakers. 30 minutes before landing. Flight attendants, please prepare cabin for arrival into Detroit. We're beginning our descent. Jasmine felt Marcus lean heavier against her side, exhausted from hunger and confusion, and the emotional weight of being made to feel unwelcome for 2 hours. The mahogany box sat secure on her lap, and she found herself touching it repeatedly like a talisman, like Rosa's ashes could somehow absorb the hurt and transform it into strength. Her phone buzzed again, the third time in 20 minutes, and this time she looked. The message was from Sarah Chen, her chief operating officer. Times Jazz, we have a situation. Employee whistleblower report just came in with video evidence. Discrimination incident on Flight SB 447 departing Atlanta today. Passenger in 1A subjected to systematic denial of service. This is bad. Need you to review immediately upon landing. Asterisk. Jasmine stared at the message, her CEO brain processing the implications. Flight SB 447 departing Atlanta. Passenger in 1A. She was passenger 1A. Sophia's video had already reached corporate headquarters, was already working its way through the reporting system, and nobody, not Sarah, not the HR team, not the legal department, knew that the victimized passenger was their own CEO. The irony was so sharp it could draw blood. She typed back, times I'll review upon landing. Do not contact the crew yet. Let them deplane naturally. I want full investigation protocol followed. Asterisk. Sarah responded. Immediately, times. Understood. Standing by. Asterisk. Jasmine set down her phone and looked out the window at Detroit, growing larger below the city of her childhood. The place where Rosa had raised her in a 3-room apartment that smelled like industrial cleaner and possibility. They were descending into the same airport where Rosa had worked 28 years, where her mother had prepared thousands of first-class meals with hands that ached from scrubbing and dreams that soared higher than the planes she'd never flown on. And now those hands were ash in a mahogany box, and her daughter was being treated like garbage on an airline she owned, and something had to break, either the system or Jasmine herself. She chose the system. Vanessa Sterling appeared in the aisle one final time, clipboard in hand, her face set with vindictive determination. Ma'am, I need you to remain seated after landing. Airport security needs to speak with you. Jasmine looked up slowly, her expression carefully neutral. On what grounds disruptive passenger behavior? Threatening flight crew. I threaten no one. You said you would make this the worst day of my life. No. I said I'd make the worst day of your life seem like a warm-up. There's a difference. One is a threat. The other is a promise backed by power you don't yet understand. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Security will be waiting. Step aside, Miss Sterling. Excuse me, I said. Step aside. I'm making a phone call. The SkyBridge aircraft was equipped with satellite-based Wi-Fi, one of Phoenix Global's premium features that Jasmine herself had approved the budget for 2 years ago. She pulled out her phone connected to the network and with deliberate slowness initiated a video call. The screen connected after 2 rings, and Richard Hayes's face appeared silver-haired, distinguished the chairman of Phoenix Global Airlines Group's board of directors. Jazz Richard said, his voice confused. I thought you were still in flight. Hello, Richard. I'm about to land in Detroit. I wanted to give you advance notice that I'll be filing a comprehensive incident report regarding SkyBridge Airways Flight 447. Richard's face shifted from confusion to concern. What kind of incident? Systematic discrimination against passengers in seats 1A and 1B. Denial of beverage service to a minor child. Denial of meal service. Hostile treatment based on racial profiling. Attempted confiscation of food from a 7-year-old. Threats of security intervention against passengers who objected to civil rights violations. Richard's face went white. Jazz, are you saying you witnessed? I'm saying I experienced it, Richard. I am passenger 1A. My son Marcus is passenger 1B. We've been discriminated against for the entire flight by lead flight attendant Vanessa Sterling, employee S47362. The cabin went absolutely still. Vanessa Sterling froze like she'd been turned to stone. Derek Morgan, the purser, made a small choking sound from the galley. Senator Brooks looked up with grim satisfaction. Michael Chen whispered, "Holy shit," under his breath. Jasmine kept her eyes locked on Vanessa as she continued speaking to Richard. "I documented everything. I have witnesses, including Senator Patricia Brooks of the Senate Transportation Committee. I have a junior flight attendant who recorded video evidence. And in approximately 2 minutes, I'm going to explain to the crew of this aircraft exactly who they've been mistreating." Richard found his voice. "Jazz, I'm so sorry. This is unacceptable. What do you need? I need you to conference in Sarah Chen and David Park from HR. I need security to meet this aircraft, but not for me, for Miss Sterling. And I need you to prepare for the biggest crisis Phoenix Global has faced in a decade. Because tomorrow morning I'm holding a press conference, and I'm telling this story to the world. Done. All of it. Jazz. 1. We'll talk when I land. Richard. Right now I have something to say to my crew." She ended the call and stood up, the mahogany box cradled carefully in her left arm, her right hand resting on Marcus's shoulder. Every eye in first class tracked her movement. "My name is Jasmine Washington," she said, her voice carrying the authority of boardrooms and courtrooms and every space she'd ever had to fight to occupy. "I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix Global Airlines Group, the parent company that owns SkyBridge Airways. I manage 42,000 employees across 6 airlines." The plane touched down with the gentlest kiss of wheels on tarmac, and Jasmine felt the reversal of thrust vibrate through her seat, through Marcus's small body, pressed against her side, through the mahogany box that held all that remained of the woman who'd taught her that silence protects the wrong people. Vanessa Sterling had stumbled backward when Jasmine revealed her identity, had collapsed into a jump seat with her face the color of old paper, her hands trembling so violently that Derek Morgan had to steady her shoulder. The purser's face carried its own devastation, the sick realization that complicity carries consequences, that doing nothing is still doing something. "I don't," Vanessa whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't know you didn't know I was CEO." Jasmine cut her off, her voice sharp as surgical steel. "But you knew I was a human being. You knew my son was a 7-year-old child. You knew we were hungry, thirsty, tired. You knew we were traveling with ashes." Her hand tightened on the mahogany box, bringing a loved one home. "And you chose cruelty anyway. That's not about who I am. That's about who you are." The aircraft taxied toward the gate, with mechanical indifference to the implosion happening in first class. Senator Brooks stood smoothing her suit jacket, her political instincts already cataloging the moment for future testimony. "Miss Washington, I'll be calling a Senate Transportation Committee hearing within the week. I trust Phoenix Global will cooperate fully and transparently, Senator. You'll have every document, every complaint record, every training manual. All of it." Michael Chen was gathering his laptop and carry-on, but he paused. "Miss Washington, I run Chen Technologies. We book about $12 million in corporate travel annually across 3 airlines. As of now, Phoenix Global is our exclusive carrier specifically because of what you're about to do. Companies that fix their shit get my money. Companies that hide it don't." "Thank you, Mr. Chen. I appreciate that vote of confidence." "It's not confidence. It's reward. You could have revealed yourself immediately, stopped everything, made it go away quiet. Instead, you documented it, like someone who knows most people can't fight back. That's leadership." The plane stopped at the gate, and the seatbelt sign chimed off. Passengers began standing, retrieving bags, shooting glances at Jasmine and Vanessa, like they were watching a documentary unfold in real time. Sophia Martinez approached from the galley, her young face blotchy with tears, her phone clutched in her hand. "Miss Washington, I sent the video to corporate whistleblower portal shortly after the beverage service incident. The plane's Wi-Fi allowed me to upload it while we were still in flight. I didn't know it was you. I couldn't watch it anymore. I've been watching Vanessa do this for months. Different passengers, always the same pattern. And I kept telling myself it wasn't my place to say anything, that I'd lose my job. That Jasmine held up a hand, gentle but firm. Sophia, you did the right thing. The hard thing. The brave thing. And tomorrow, we're going to talk about a new position for you. Ma'am, Chief Passenger Dignity Officer. New role. Reports directly to me. Interested. Sophia's eyes went wide. I'm 24. I've been here 8 months. And in 8 months, you've shown more integrity than people with 16 years' experience. We need people who'll do the right thing when it's hard. That's you. Think about it. Sophia nodded, unable to speak, fresh tears tracking down her face. The gate agent opened the aircraft door, and airport security stepped in 2 officers in Detroit Metropolitan Airport uniforms. Professional, but wary. We received a call from Phoenix Global Corporate requesting security assistance, the lead officer said, scanning the cabin. Yes, Jasmine replied. I'm Jasmine Washington, CEO of Phoenix Global. I need you to escort Miss Vanessa Sterling off this aircraft. She's terminated effective immediately and needs to be removed from airport secure areas. Phoenix Global HR will meet her in the terminal. The officer's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded. Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us, he said to Vanessa, his tone respectful but immovable. Vanessa looked at Jasmine one last time. Her face a battlefield of emotions, shock, rage, humiliation, and underneath it all, the terrible understanding that she'd destroyed herself. I have 16 years with this company, she said, her voice small. I have a daughter. I have a mortgage. You had 16 years, Jasmine corrected. You had a career. You had the trust of passengers who depended on you for dignity at 30,000 feet. And you weaponized that trust against anyone you decided didn't belong. That ends now. Not just for you. For everyone. Like you. Security escorted Vanessa down the aisle, past Senator Brooks, who watched with the cold assessment of someone already drafting legislation, past Michael Chen, who was typing rapidly on his phone, past the elderly couple who'd remained silent throughout their silence, its own form of complicity. Marcus tugged Jasmine's hand. Mommy, where's that lady going? She's going home. Baby, she won't be working on airplanes anymore. Because she was mean. Because she was mean, yes. And because meanness has consequences. The other passengers deplaned quickly, most avoiding eye contact, but a few approaching Jasmine with quiet words of support, with business cards, with promises to testify if needed. The cabin emptied until only Jasmine, Marcus, Senator Brooks, and Sophia remained. Miss Washington Brooks said, I've documented everything. Photos, notes, timestamps. My full committee will hear this case. Thank you. Senator, don't thank me. What you're about to do going public as both victim and CEO, that's going to be brutal. Media will crucify you or canonize you. There's no middle ground, I know. But my son asked if he did something wrong. If going public means one less child asks that question, it's worth it. Brooks studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Rosa raised you right. The senator deplaned, leaving Jasmine and Marcus to gather their things. Sophia helped with their bags, her hands still shaking slightly. Miss Martinez, Jasmine said quietly, How many times have you seen Vanessa do this? Sophia's face crumpled. 6 times that I could document with certainty. In 8 months. Always passengers of color or disabled passengers or anyone she decided looked wrong for first class. I later learned from other crew members that this had been happening for years on flights I wasn't assigned to. I reported it twice. Nothing happened. HR sent her to a training course. That's it. Not anymore. Tomorrow starts a new era. And you're going to help build it. They stepped off the aircraft into the jet bridge, And Jasmine saw Aunt Denise waiting at the gate, 58 years old, with Rosa's eyes and Rosa's smile, arms already open. Marcus ran to her. "Aunt Denise, baby boy, oh, let me look at you," Denise scooped him up, then saw Jasmine emerging with the mahogany box, and her face shifted into grief. "Oh, Jazz, you brought her home." "We brought her home," Jasmine corrected, her voice finally breaking, tears finally falling. "And Denise, something happened on the flight. Something I have to fix." Denise saw something in her niece's face. The same steel Rosa had carried, tempered now in fire. "Tell me in the car." "Baby, let's get Rosa settled first. The rest can wait." But the rest couldn't wait. Jasmine's phone was already exploding with messages, with news alerts, with the beginning of a media firestorm that would reshape an industry. 3 months after Flight SB 447, Jasmine Washington stood in the Hart Senate office building in Washington, D.C. Her hand raised, her voice steady, as she swore to tell the truth before the Senate Transportation Committee. The hearing room was packed, media in the back rows, advocates lining the walls. Phoenix Global's legal team seated behind her like nervous sentries. Senator Patricia Brooks presided from the elevated bench, her silver hair catching television lights, her expression grave. "Miss Washington, thank you for your testimony today. I want to start by asking, you had the power to resolve this quietly. You could have fired those involved, settled with yourself, and moved on. Why didn't you?" Jasmine glanced at the gallery where Marcus sat between Aunt Denise and Sophia Martinez, his 8-year-old face solemn in a way no child's should be. "Because quiet resolutions protect institutions, Senator, not people. My son needs to grow up in a world where discrimination has public consequences, not just private settlements. Silence protects the wrong people. My mother taught me that." "Your mother, Rosa, worked as a flight caterer for 28 years, correct?" "Yes, ma'am. She prepared over 2.8 million first-class meals. She never sat in first class once." And the irony of her daughter, now CEO of an airline group, being discriminated against in first class while carrying Rosa's ashes home, that must have been profound. Jasmine's voice caught. "It was devastating, Senator. But it was also clarifying. Because if it could happen to a CEO, how many passengers without power experienced the same treatment and had no recourse?" Senator Brooks nodded. "Our investigation has revealed disturbing patterns. Miss Martinez, you're now Chief Passenger Dignity Officer at Phoenix Global. Tell us about what you witnessed." Sophia, nervous in her new Navy suit, leaned toward the microphone. "Senator, in my 8 months as a flight attendant before the incident, I witnessed lead flight attendant Vanessa Sterling discriminate against passengers at least 6 times that I could document with certainty. The pattern was consistent: passengers of color, disabled passengers. Passengers she deemed didn't fit first-class demographics. She'd deny service, question tickets multiple times, refuse meals, create hostile environments. I later learned from other crew members that this had been happening for years on flights I wasn't assigned to. And you reported this twice." Senator: "Both times HR sent her to a 2-hour training session and closed the case. The message was clear: reporting didn't change behavior. It just made you a problem employee. Until you recorded the incident with Miss Washington." "Yes, ma'am. Because I watched a 7-year-old boy ask his mother if he'd done something wrong. And I realized that if I stayed silent, I was part of the problem." The hearing continued for 6 hours. Testimony from Dr. Maya Patel, the cardiac surgeon who'd been denied service in 2020 and received a form letter apology. From Alicia Morrison, whose board member father had buried her complaint to avoid embarrassment. From Michael Chen, the tech CEO, who'd witnessed everything. From 12 other victims identified through Phoenix Global's investigation, their stories creating a tapestry of systematic abuse. When Jasmine's turn came for full testimony, she spoke for 28 minutes without notes, the mahogany box containing Rosa's ashes sitting on the table before her. Senator Brooks asked me why I went public. Let me be clear about something. Our annual reports showed 247 discrimination complaints buried in pages of data I approved, but didn't scrutinize deeply enough. I saw the number. I asked if it was within industry norms, and when told yes, I moved on. I didn't question why. Only 3 resulted in termination. I didn't demand to see individual cases. I treated human suffering as a metric to be benchmarked instead of a crisis to be solved. I approved budgets for customer service training that did nothing. I failed every single one of those 247 people. And that failure meant my own son had to experience what they experienced. I can't undo that. But I can make sure complaint 248 is the last one buried. She detailed Phoenix Global's reforms, the Rosa Washington Dignity Charter with zero-tolerance enforcement, the $15 million Victim Compensation Fund, the mandatory independent reviews, the transparency dashboard, publishing all complaint data. Some critics say I'm only acting because it happened to me, Jasmine continued. They're right. I should have acted when it was happening to others. My awakening shouldn't have required my son's trauma. That's my failure as a leader. But it's also why I'm qualified to fix it, because I know exactly how these systems fail, how complaints get buried, how training becomes a substitute for accountability. I lived it from both sides. The hearing room erupted in applause, sustained and genuine, until Senator Brooks gavelled for order. 3 weeks later, the Equal Skies Act passed the Senate 78-22, the House 312-118. The signing ceremony at the White House featured Jasmine, Marcus Senator Brooks, Sophia Martinez, and Dr. Patel. When the president handed Marcus the signing pen, photographs captured the moment. A 7-year-old who'd once asked if he'd done something wrong helped sign into law protections for millions. The industry transformation spread like wildfire. 6 major airlines adopted similar dignity charters within 18 months. 3 others faced customer boycotts until they complied. The European Union mandated transparency requirements for all carriers operating in EU airspace. Vanessa Sterling's criminal trial concluded with 30 months in federal prison, $250,000 in fines, and a lifetime ban from any FAA licensed position. She was convicted under Title 18 U.S.C. Section 245B, which criminalizes interference with federally protected activities based on race, and additional counts of falsifying safety reports when she had documented false claims about disruptive passengers in flight logs to justify her discrimination. During sentencing, Judge Margaret Chen's words echoed through courtrooms and corporate boardrooms. You didn't just deny a child juice. You systematically violated federal civil rights law and then covered your tracks with fraudulent documentation. You told him he didn't belong in the sky. But the most profound changes happened in smaller moments, in training centers, where Sophia Martinez taught dignity to thousands of employees, in airport terminals, where passenger Bill of Rights posters hung beside every gate, in the faces of passengers who flew without fear of humiliation for the first time in their lives. Dorothy Hughes, the 83-year-old woman, removed from first class in 1968, received her settlement check and framed Jasmine's personal apology letter. When Jasmine and Marcus visited her small Detroit home, Dorothy held Marcus's face in her weathered hands and said, "Baby boy, your mama changed the world. You remember that." 3 years after Flight SB 447, Jasmine stood in the October sunshine outside a gleaming glass and steel building in Atlanta, her hand resting on Marcus's shoulder as he gripped oversized scissors for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The Rosa Washington Center for Dignity and Inclusion rose 5 stories behind them, $50 million of commitment to ensuring that her mother's name meant something beyond service and sacrifice, that it meant transformation. Marcus was 10, now taller and more confident, but Jasmine could still see the ghost of that frightened 7-year-old asking if he'd done something wrong. That ghost had become his purpose. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jasmine said into the microphone, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd of employees, journalists, advocates, and the 15 victims from the class action lawsuit who stood on the stage as honored guests. 3 years ago, I sat in seat 1A of a flight, holding my mother's ashes, watching my son be denied basic dignity. Today, we open a center named after a woman who never sat in first class, but who raised a daughter, who changed an entire industry. She gestured to the building behind her. This center will train every airline employee in America. They'll learn not just what discrimination looks like, but why it matters. They'll hear from Dorothy Hughes, who waited 55 years for justice. From Dr. Patel, who was made to feel like a fraud in her own profession. From Alicia Morrison, who was erased by her own father's shame. Jasmine paused, feeling the familiar burn of tears she'd learned to let fall without shame. And they'll hear from Marcus. Her son stepped to the microphone, reading from a paper he'd written himself, his 10-year-old voice clear and strong. "Hi, I'm Marcus. When I was 7, I asked my mom if I did something wrong. I didn't understand why the flight attendant was mean to me. Now I'm 10, and I understand more that lady was mean because of my skin color, because she thought people like me don't belong in nice places. But my mom taught me I belong everywhere, not because I'm a CEO's son, but because I'm a human being. And so does everyone else." He looked up from his paper, his eyes finding the crowd. "My grandma Rosa never got to sit in first class. But because of what happened to me and my mom, millions of people will be treated better when they fly. This center has my grandma's name on it. But really, it's for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong. You do belong. And we're going to make sure everyone knows it." The applause was thunderous. Sustained people rising to their feet until the entire plaza stood in ovation for a child who'd turned trauma into purpose. Jasmine cut the ribbon with Marcus's help, cameras flashing like starbursts. And then they toured the center together, past the museum, past the training rooms, where role-play scenarios taught empathy and intervention, past the research wing, studying bias in transportation systems. In the central atrium, a wall of photographs honored the victims, all 847 people who had filed formal complaints about discriminatory treatment across Phoenix Global's 6 airlines over the past decade. Vanessa Sterling's case had exposed a pattern. Her personal problem passengers list contained 127 names, but the investigation revealed she was one of 38 flight attendants engaged in similar behavior, their collective actions affecting hundreds. The photos were arranged in a mosaic that formed Rosa's portrait when viewed from a distance. Individual suffering transformed into collective remembrance. That evening, after the speeches and tours and interviews, Jasmine drove Marcus to the Detroit cemetery where Rosa rested. The October air was crisp, leaves crunching under their feet as they walked to the simple granite headstone that now bore an additional inscription. The Rosa Washington Dignity Center, established 2026, teaching dignity to millions. Marcus placed fresh flowers on the grave, then sat cross-legged in the grass like he was having a conversation. "Hey, Grandma, I gave a speech today at your center. A lot of people clapped. I think you would have liked it." Jasmine sat beside him, her hand on the cool granite. "Your son asked me something yesterday." "Mama," she said quietly. "He asked if I forgive Vanessa Sterling. I told him I don't know if I forgive her, but I believe people can change, and you would want us to give people that chance." She pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a photograph. Vanessa Sterling, released from federal prison 18 months ago, after serving her full sentence with time off for good behavior and completion of rehabilitation programs. Standing before a high school auditorium, giving a talk about the consequences of prejudice, her speaking fees donated to the Rosa Washington Dignity Fund. "That's the mean lady?" Marcus asked. "That's her. She's trying to do better now. It doesn't erase what she did, but it might prevent the next person from doing it. Is that why you started the redemption program?" "Yes, baby. Because punishment without change doesn't help anyone. If she can help even one person understand why discrimination is wrong, then something good comes from something bad." Marcus considered this with the seriousness of someone who'd learned early that the world was complicated. "I think Grandma would like it." was always nice to everyone, even people who were mean to her. She was. And that's the lesson, Marcus. Not that we accept mistreatment, but that we demand better while believing people can become better. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over Detroit, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Jasmine's phone buzzed with the Daily Digest. Phoenix Global's discrimination complaints were down 84%. Customer satisfaction had reached industry-leading levels. The company's stock had climbed 38%, as ESG investors flooded in 6 other airlines had adopted similar reforms. And the Equal Skies Act had been cited in 12 state legislatures, considering additional passenger protections. But the number that mattered most was smaller, 0, substantiated complaints in the past 90 days across all Phoenix Global Airlines. 0 passengers told they didn't belong. 0 children denied juice. Mom, Marcus said, breaking the silence. My teacher wants to publish my essay, the one about you changing the world, in a book about kids who stood up for what's right. Is that okay? What do you think? I think Grandma would want people to know our story so it doesn't happen to other kids. Then we'll do it. Marcus leaned against her side, and she wrapped her arm around him. 3 generations connected in that moment. Rosa's ashes beneath the earth, Jasmine's arm around her son, Marcus's future spreading before him like the darkening sky. Mommy, can I ask you something always? Baby. That question I asked on the plane, did I do something wrong? People use it as a hashtag now. They share stories about being treated badly. Does that mean something good came from it? Jasmine's heart swelled with pride and pain in equal measure. Yes, baby. 14 million people have used that hashtag to share their stories. You asking that question started a conversation that's changing how we treat each other. That's something very good. Cool, Marcus said simply, with the matter-of-fact acceptance of a 10-year-old who'd somehow become a civil rights symbol. I'm hungry. Can we get pizza? Jasmine laughed, the sound surprising her with its genuineness. Yes, we can get pizza. Any kind you want. Even with pineapple. Even with pineapple. You little monster. As they walked back to the car, Marcus's hand in hers, Jasmine looked back at Rosa's grave one last time. The fading light caught the granite just right, and for a moment, she could almost see her mother there, 62 years old in her flight caterer uniform. Hands, rough from work. Eyes soft, with pride lips moving in the blessing. She'd given 1,000 times. Baby girl, you're going to change the world. And somehow, impossibly carrying ashes and raising a son and turning trauma into transformation, Jasmine Washington had done exactly that. Sometimes injustice finds us in the most unexpected places, 30,000 feet above the ground, while carrying our grief, while protecting our children. Jasmine Washington's story teaches us that how we respond to discrimination doesn't just define our character, it can reshape entire industries. When that flight attendant questioned whether a black mother and her 7-year-old son belonged in first class, Jasmine didn't explode with rage. She documented. She stayed composed. She waited for her moment. And in doing so, she exposed a pattern affecting hundreds of thousands of travelers. But here's what makes this story extraordinary. Jasmine didn't just fight for herself. She transformed her personal trauma into systemic change. Federal legislation, training centers, cultural shifts across an entire industry. She taught her son that belonging isn't a privilege granted by others. It's an inherent human right. The most profound lesson. Change requires both accountability and redemption. Vanessa Sterling went to prison. Yes, but the story didn't end there. It ended with education, with prevention, with millions of passengers treated with dignity because one mother refused to accept that her child should ever feel like he did something wrong simply by existing